Bob, this brings us back to the old days. You love the doubleheaders, and you love the afternoon baseball in October. Yeah. I mean, you live that way with the World Series, but there is nothing better than a doubleheader in the postseason with the first game in the afternoon during the week. What's your take on that? Let's start there first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly mid-afternoon on the East Coast, but the sun will still be shining, no question about that. And it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Arizona for that first game. So, yeah, it has a little bit of an old-time October feel. But barring something drastically in terms of a change, we're never going to see another day game in the World Series, which is kind of a shame.
No, it sure is. We've gone through that 1,000 times. Let's start with the Astros. Boy, their consistency, how good they are on the road, and 7 straight ALCSs. You know, that is very impressive. You know, you could say, well, the Yankees 36-40 went to all the World Series in a row, but they didn't have to win extra playoff rounds to do that. The Astros have gotten 7 ALCSs, and they had to win divisional series to win 7 straight ALCSs. Tells you about their greatness as a franchise. Let's start there first. Go ahead.
No question about it. And whatever blemish there is, and maybe it's more than a blemish on the resume of Jeff Luhnow, what he put in place and others have carried forward has been very effective. We might even say brilliant from its inception to the payoff, 7 straight appearances in the League Championship Series. And some people misinterpreted. We talked about this once before, Doug. What I said a year ago when the Astros swept the Yankees and then went on to the World Series, which they ultimately won, I said a lot of people, it's a little bit like the Patriots' success being discounted by people because of Spygate or Deflategate, which is not to say that those things should be ignored. But too many people still try to attribute everything that the Astros have achieved, or most of it, around something that happened in 2017 and maybe a couple of other years. And it just doesn't add up. Nobody's justifying what happened with that spying scandal. Nobody's justifying the sign stealing. That's what I'm trying to say. The sign stealing using technology to do it. But that doesn't explain away the bulk of what they've been able to achieve.
100% right. That's way past. That's in my rearview window. I'm with you 1,000%. How about the old guys? How about the old guys doing such a good job as managers, Bochy and Dusty? Do you think it sort of is maybe an indication that they realize now that the 30-year-old who doesn't have a day of managerial experience and who's going to be dictated to by the front office, maybe that isn't necessarily the way to go as far as the guy in the dugout is concerned, considering how well Bochy has done, and, of course, the great Dusty at 74 years of age winning a World Championship last year. How about that? Let me hear.
Well, then you have Buck Showalter, 4-time Manager of the Year. In his first season with the Mets, he wins 101, and then the bottom falls out of the second season, and in comes David Stearns, and he wants his own guy. We'll see who that may be. Craig Counsell's name being kicked around. And we know that there's going to be a very large analytic influence. So even had Buck survived to manage another year or beyond, the analytics would be part of what he has to take into account. And to one extent or another, that's true of Dusty and of Bochy. But each of them, it appears, are going with a gut feeling, at least on occasion, rather than some computer printout.
100% right. Do you think that Arizona and your series that you have with the Dodgers, do you think that might convince the powers that be, without going into the restructuring in the postseason, Bob, do you think that might convince them to go best of 7 in the divisional round, based on what happened with the teams with the best records, specifically Braves and Dodgers? Let me hear your thoughts on that.
Yes, and it isn't against any other team. It isn't because the Phillies won or the Diamondbacks won and the Diamondbacks had only 84 wins. But it makes sense, and I've said this for 20 years, it doesn't make any sense for the divisional round, which included at the beginning 1 wild card and the 3rd best division winner. Why would you want that one to be subject to the most fluky possible result, which is best of 5? That doesn't delegitimize what any team accomplished in a best of 5. But it makes sense to have that round be the same as the LCS and the World Series, which is best out of 7, which is a truer test. It tests the depth of your team. In a best of 5, the way some of the scheduling is set up, had the Dodgers and Diamondbacks gone 5, there would have been 3 off days within those 5 games, which is a distortion of the way you approach pitching. So I think that, making all the rounds after the wild card round a 7-gamer. And the other thing I'd suggest, and I've kind of tweaked my own ideas as we go along here, because the rust versus rest thing has become more of an issue. The second and third wild cards play a one-game knockout. Boom. On the home field of the better wild card of the two. Then they go to the best wild card. Very often the best wild card is substantially better than the other two wild cards. Think of the Phillies this year as an example. And sometimes they're the second best team in the whole league. Think of the Dodgers a couple of years ago, 106 wins to San Francisco's 107. So the survivor of the first knockout goes to that team. That team has to win only one game to get to the divisional round. The lesser wild cards have to win two games to get to the divisional round. You play one on Monday night, the other on Tuesday night. You start the divisional round on Thursday. That's only 3 days rest for the teams that got the bye. And you don't involve the third division winner in the wild card round. I think that's about as fair as we can do it, given the fact that you want to have expanded playoffs.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing they're trying to walk, and I think you came up with a good one there. In your eyes, does Kershaw's postseason performance, and now to a certain degree Scherzer, who has been absolutely brutal recently, does that diminish their greatness as far as pitchers are concerned?
It's part of the resume, and really the Kershaw story isn't just this season. It's one of the generational stories in baseball. It's startling. Here's a guy whose career earned run average is the best of any starter since 1920, 2.48, I think it is. And now, after getting shelled in the first inning against the Diamondbacks in Game 1 a week or so ago, his postseason ERA is almost exactly 2 runs higher than that, at 4.49. His career winning percentage is .695. The only guy who's higher than that is Spud Chandler, who won barely more than 100 games for great Yankee teams in the 30s and 40s. Of anyone who has a substantially longer career, that's the highest winning percentage of all time, .695. But in the postseason, he's 13-13. Some of that may be attributable to circumstance, but it is part of his resume. Does it stop him from being a first ballot Hall of Famer? Absolutely not. And probably the same thing is true of Scherzer.
100%. But when your ERA is 2 runs higher than what it is in the regular season from a postseason standpoint, and you've made 32 starts, I mean, that's a whole season. That does raise an eyebrow. I don't think there's really any way that you can go with any way you can determine that. Do you think that the fact that Bochy and Dusty have allowed their pitchers to pitch a little longer, they don't take the guy out in 5 seconds when he gives up a home run? Javier last night, obviously, a game in Minnesota, Verlander pitched Montgomery pitched into the 7th inning. Do you think that will start a new trend, Bob, where managers will go a little longer with their starting pitchers and not go with these, printouts third time through the lineup? Do you think their success with allowing pitchers to pitch will help the sport as far as seeing the great pitchers try to navigate that lineup through a third time in subsequent years? How about that?
Maybe a little bit, because your best guy or your best second or third guy, when you're talking about your starters in a series, they might be, even if they're losing a little bit in the 5th inning, the 6th inning, they still might be better than the next guy out of the bullpen. What you're basically counting on is you're going to bring 4 guys out, and they're each going to pitch an inning, generally speaking. One of those 4 might crap out that day. Who says that this is going to work according to plan? It's a pretty complicated plan. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to see guys throw 30 complete games like Juan Marichal did and Sandy Koufax did and that kind of thing. But maybe there's something to be said for sticking a little bit longer with one of your top 3 starters, at least. When you get to your 4th starter, then that's a roll of the dice.
Yeah, 100%. Do you think, the Astros remind me a little bit of, Bob, last thing before you go, they remind me a little bit of the A's in the early 70s, who may have not been great in the regular season at times. Yeah. But, when you got to the postseason, they pitched well. They were timely hitting. They had, Jackson and Alvarez. I mean, I see some similarity. A lot of people didn't love the A's. I see some similarities with Houston and the A's from that standpoint. Let me get your thoughts on that. Go ahead.
Yeah, and a winning pedigree. Once that had been established, the Astros won 3 straight World Series, but I think they won the division on the front end of that and also on the back end of that. So they had 5 straight division championships with the 3 World Series wins in the middle. And once that winning culture is established, as it is in Houston, then that affects how everybody approaches it. One more point I'd like to make about the upcoming Phillies-Diamondbacks game. It's obvious that the Phillies are mashing everywhere, 6 home runs in that 10-0 victory. Brandon Pfaadt goes to the mound for the D-backs. He won Game 3, actually didn't pitch 5 innings, didn't get credit, but he pitched shutout ball for 4 innings plus in Game 3 against the Dodgers. But the Diamondbacks were up 2-0, not down 2-0, and the Dodgers lineup was slumping. Now he gets the ball with his team down 2-0, and the Phillies rampaging. And in addition to what their lineup is doing, I think this has been somewhat overlooked. In 8 postseason games, the Phillies pitching staff has allowed 13 runs. And half of those games, 4, were against the Atlanta Braves with an historically strong lineup. So right now, the Phillies, of the 4 remaining teams, the Phillies are the team that is hitting on all cylinders to the greatest extent.
100%. If it wasn't for Hoffman in the 8th inning of Game 2 against Atlanta, they would not have lost the playoff game yet because they gave up the home run to Austin Riley. Great job, Bob. You know we love you. Keep in touch. Thanks for a couple minutes here today. Appreciate it.
All right, Doug. See ya.